11 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few kickers I have as sleepers this week. The first guy, Greg the Leg Zuerlein of the New York Jets. Zuerlein, I've talked about him a lot this season as a sleeper option, but fantasy owners have still left him out there on the waiver wire in tons of leagues, available in 81% of leagues. So the last few games here for Greg the Leg: Week 7 at Denver 12, Week 8 versus New England 5, and Week 9 versus Buffalo 10. So the Jets had the bye in Week 10, and now this week here, back versus the Patriots in New England, this time in Gillette Stadium, giving up the 12th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So we know this Patriot defense is a team that don't give up a lot of touchdowns, and this Jet team's a team as well that don't score a lot of touchdowns. So it's a good recipe for a successful ball game this week here for Greg Zuerlein, where he's going to get a few opportunities. I did rank him in my top 12 this week at the kicker position, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he could score anywhere from 7 to 10 fantasy points. And I have him as a sleeper this week. The next kicker is Joey Sly of the Washington Commanders. So Joey Sly, it's been a quiet year for him, but he had a breakout ball game on Monday Night Football with 2 50-plus yarders in that one that put the Commanders over the top in the upset victory versus the Philadelphia Eagles. So Joey Sly available right now in tons of fantasy leagues still in 93%. So the last few games here for him: Week 8 in Indianapolis 5, Week 9 versus Minnesota 6, and then Week 10 at Philly, like I mentioned, 19 fantasy points. So this week here, it's a good thing. It's an indoor game at Houston. They give up the 9th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. I could see Joey Sly in this one having a decent performance. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and score 19 fantasy points, but anywhere from the 6 to the 10-point range is definitely a possibility in a game where this Commander team should be in the red zone at least 4 or 5 times. And if you need a kicker in deeper leagues right now, he's available, like I said, in 93% of fantasy leagues. For the final kicker I look to get off the wire this week's Michael Badgley of the Detroit Lions. So Badgley this season, he's been with the Lions only a few weeks, and he's had a couple decent ball games. Week 8 versus Miami 10, Week 9 versus Green Bay 1, Week 10 at Chicago 7, and this week here, a good matchup at the New York Giants. I give up the 4th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So this Badgley and this Lion team, they could score the football at a decent rate, but in this one, I think they're going to have to settle for a few field goals. And Badgley last season, he was pretty decent with the Indianapolis Colts. Right now, available in 84% of fantasy leagues. I think he could have a good game here versus the New York Giants, where this one could be in the mid-teens to low 20s, where the Giants, I believe, pull this ball game out. But anyway, right now, available in 84% of fantasy leagues. On paper, it's a good matchup where they give up the 4th most points, and I would have him as a sleeper this week. So that's a few kickers I have as sleepers for Week 11 of the fantasy football season.